think that a lot of us get so caught up in trying to think through the world and think through all our actions and think through how everything is supposed to be so much we forget to live. And my whole thing is like, why are we living on our heads when we want to live in the world? It doesn't make sense. I feel like a lot of times we look for our solutions to our internal problems in the external world, which is, at times good, at times it works, but I find that the real validation and anything that you try to get from the world is really something you need internally. Like, it's not really the possessions that we like, the money, whatever greed people have, it's how whatever that possession makes them feel. And if it's only focused on what you feel and it's only about how you are internally, why are we looking externally for these things? Because a lot of times, whatever we find externally, whatever we seek to possess, doesn't actually satiate whatever desire we have. It just is a temporary fix to a lifelong problem. And a lifelong problem is just not giving self to yourself, not giving understanding, not giving care and love to who you are. We try to get it so much in thought and in whatever that we forget that we're supposed to be here. You know, and it's one thing to say like people overthink and everybody thinks and everybody gets caught up in their mind at times, but it's a different thing to say that, people live in their heads. And I think that a lot of us live in our heads in regards to our life because we're so caught up in thinking through our issues and thinking through everything life has to offer that we question ourselves. We question so much around us that we forget that, the curiosity isn't supposed to be placed outward but inward. It's about realizing how much of yourself is there, not how much there is out here for you, you know. And in my life, I feel like I did spend a lot of time living in my head or living in thought because, at times you think that's the right thing to do. And it's also good to think through your actions and think through whatever you need to think through. But you have to realize at some point your mind is not a console. It's a tool that you use in order to traverse the world. And if all you could do is think about it, it's probably not worth thought. And I feel like a lot of us get in these situations where, we try to think through our issues and think how a situation is going to be so much that we forget we're supposed to experience it. We're supposed to live it. And I feel like that's where part of the anxiety and stress comes from because we fail to allow things to be as they are and we spend so much time trying to force it in thought. And you can't control how a circumstance is going to be. You can't control how anything but yourself is going to be. So why try to exercise that kind of force and control? Because then you have expectation. And I feel like expectation is what breeds fear and anxiety because we feel like things are supposed to be a certain way and we only can, adapt ourselves to a certain situation. And what I'm saying is it's about giving yourself enough faith to traverse through any situation. Realize that no matter what is going to come of it, whatever, no matter what's going to come into your life, you're going to be there. And as long as you're there, you have someone there. As long as you're there, as long as you give yourself the validation you need and the attention and understanding, you can understand any situation. And that's not to say nothing will get on your nerves and nothing will get under your skin, but to say that it won't matter. Once you realize that your problems aren't you and they're just problems, then you can separate yourself from it. And I realize we separate ourselves from our good parts and we treat our bad parts as if they're, integral to our character when they're not. Your problems are simply just problems. And once you realize that, whatever you're doing and whatever thing you're observing or have a perspective on is subject to your own bias, you have to sort of confront where that bias comes from. Understand your truth and understand where your perspective is truly limiting who you are. Because it's one thing to say that people get caught up in their heads, and it's one thing to say that people get caught up in the world, but it's an entirely different thing to realize people get caught up in themselves. We think we are a certain way so often. We think we can do this. We think we can't do that. And it stops us from doing anything. I feel like the real stress and the real motive to any life should be to be present, to be in the moment, to be in the world so you can actually find out and experience. And, thought is great. I love thinking all the time, but it doesn't actually come to benefit you once you're actually in the moment. And that's not to say don't think through anything, not to say don't take any time to prepare, but use your mind as a tool. Like if I need to get something, then I don't know how to do it, then I think. And I think of the action I need to do, then I take the action. I put myself into the world, I put the thought into action. If you want your dreams to be in reality, why would you keep them in your head? And that's what I mean by living in the world, because you want yourself to be in the world, but you're thinking of yourself in your head so much you forget that you can experience stuff here. We forget that we're here so often that we question it at times, like, oh, is what I'm doing really beneficial to who I am, or what am I doing? And we ask so many questions, like, what's the point of if that question if you can answer it by being present? Like, what am I doing? Open your eyes and see. And I've said that in a video before, but like, I feel like that's what's kind of got me out of that rut of being caught up in my own mental, because you can think through anything, and acknowledging negative possibility is not a negative thing, but living in negative possibility is. It's one thing to acknowledge something, but it's another thing to live it in. And I realize we have to live in whatever reality we want to. Not to say be utterly delusional, but understand that your perspective controls a lot about your life. Beauty and ugliness exist all at the same time. Good and bad exist all at the same time, right in front of us. And it's just about your perspective and your ability to see through the nonsense that's out here. And a lot of the times, the nonsense is not from the world, but from ourselves. It's about the poison that we give to ourselves, and thinking that we're an illness, and thinking that we need to be fixed, and thinking that all this stuff needs to change in order for us to be whole. But what I realize is no matter what happens, you're already there. You're already enough. You might not like certain parts. You might think you need to work on it, and that might be true. But what I'm realizing is working on yourself and finding those parts doesn't come from overthought. It comes from action. It comes from expressing yourself into the world enough to see what parts you need to change and understand better. And I really didn't understand why I did some of the things I did, and why I got myself into certain situations, until I allowed myself to feel whatever I need to feel and act upon whatever I feel like I needed to act upon. And then you learn by trial and error. The first step always reveals the second. It's not about figuring out the entire staircase and counting out how many steps you have to take to get to your end goal. It's about taking that first step and living in the present and appreciating that step for what it is. Because if you can't appreciate the single step, you're not going to be able to appreciate anything else that comes with it. You have to learn to love who you are while you're changing. Love whatever comes with it too. We all have parts of ourselves that I feel like we need to work on. I still have parts of myself I feel like I need to work on, but it's not a stress thing. It's not a feeling like, oh, I won't be good until I fix this. It's like, I'm good now, but I'll be greater then. Like once I do this, I'll be better. And I feel like that's the healthiest mindset you can have about your own change, because it's not instantiating that who you are now is bad. It's just instantiating that you can always get better. You can always get better, and it's about loving who you are now too. In acknowledging that you can get better. It's not saying that you aren't good now. You can always get better. Something can always get better. $2 is always more than $1, but that doesn't mean $1 shouldn't be appreciated. It's about not letting things exist in reference to each other. Like my future self is not in reference to me, it is me. How can I be in reference to myself? It doesn't make sense in that way. So when we reference the past and the future, it's important to not certainly separate that from you. We think about our past selves sometimes in positive light, sometimes in negative light. But it's not saying that who you are then is the same as who you are now. You're still you. I'm still Ian. I'm still Ian, but I may express myself in a different way. I might have gotten better. I might have improved upon Ian. But that doesn't mean who I am back then wasn't who I am now. It's just understanding that people change, and you have to love yourself through your change regardless of what it was. And sometimes you have to look back in the past with love. You have to look back there to appreciate what was, because it got you to where you are now, and it's going to get you to where you are in the future. And the main thing that we need to do in order to do that is to be present. Why live in your mind when you can live in the world? That's where all your power is. That's where all the love, appreciation, that's where you can truly feel, I feel like. Because if we're too caught up in our heads, then our action is no longer about action, but about thought. If I'm waiting on a presentation and I'm getting anxious about it, it's because I'm thinking through the presentation. I'm thinking about how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to do that, instead of just trying to do it. You can do your preparation, you can practice, in your room, you can practice before. But I feel like any anxiety is just questioning of the self. And ultimately, we won't know until we find out. So there's no point in placing your stress upon yourself to do it. And since I've been doing that, I find that it's easier to do stuff that I feel like would have stressed me out in the past. Because it's not about the preparedness 100%. It's about your mentality about your preparedness. It's about your feeling about yourself. Because if I think I can do something, 100%, I prepare myself, a tiny bit. Regardless, I'm gonna be honest with myself. Because if I do bad, then it's just because of a lack of preparation. But I didn't hold myself back through my own mentality. I didn't allow myself to be diminished by myself. And I think a lot of people realize that they have their own light, they have their own shine, and I think everybody's shining in their own way. And we block our own shine by being sort of either one, expecting others to see it, and two, not acknowledging seeing it ourselves. It's about the validation you give to yourself at the end of the day that allows you to traverse the world in a way that's befitting of you. Because if you honestly can, if you are honest with yourself and you practice self-love to any degree, you'll realize that you'll want the best for yourself. You won't put yourself in the ugly situations. You won't do the things that have harmed you in the past, and you'll move forward. And we have to realize a lot of times that attachment isn't always connection. Sometimes we feel attached to people, events, and circumstances that aren't necessarily inherent to our character just because they taught us something about ourselves, or they made us feel a certain way about ourselves that we can't shake. And that the can't shaking aspect of it is realizing that it's not necessarily inherent to your character. He who thinks he's stuck is stuck. You know, the mind is so powerful. If you think it's powerless, it will have no power. And that's why I feel like it's important to have a sort of positive mentality about yourself, even if it is delusional. As long as you're being honest with yourself, I feel like any person can overcome it by trying their best and being themselves. If you're trying your best and being yourself, that's really all you have to do. Keep a positive intention with the world, because there's no point not to. There's really no point not to. You can think the world is negative. You can think that everything's coming against you, and the world's going to show you that. Or you can try to be at peace with yourself and try to be happy about whatever it is that comes towards you. Sometimes things are negative. Like some things still stress me out to this day, but I just have to keep reminding myself. So, like, if it's not in my hands, it shouldn't be in my mind. A lot of things aren't always in our control, and if they are, then you control what you can and you let the rest go, because it's not within your control. Things are only going to be as they are, and as long as we try to hold on to that control over the world's going to control us. You have to realize the only thing that you truly can possess is yourself, and I feel like that's freedom. In any sense, is to possess yourself. No matter the circumstance, having some sort of backing in your own mental, in your own self, and realizing no matter the situation, you're going to persist. And what I'm realizing is no matter what the situation is, everybody always persists. Even if you're a fragment of who you thought you were, this, that, and the other, you still are you. And there's still potential out there as long as you are breathing. That's why I feel like it's important to validate yourself regardless of what you do, because what you do or who you are is not in reference to what you do. It's in reference to who you are. If you're great, if you're good, and you should give yourself validation regardless of what it is you possess and what it is you have achieved. Because it's not about that. And it never has been. I feel like any people who have achieved great things or have any type of humility or anything like that, it's just about a gratitude for self and gratitude for understanding. Having yourself in your possession isn't necessarily about having a crazy amount of pride or narcissism towards the world. It's just having affection towards yourself in the world. Realizing that, you lose nothing in trying and gain everything in success. And the same thing works with not necessarily trying to be you, but trying to give yourself grace and freedom enough to be yourself. Allowing your expression to seep through whatever you want so you don't have to worry. And I feel like once you stand on who you are and once you learn to appreciate whatever that looks like, that's when you can start doing what you need to do in order to change. Like, one thing for me is I've been trying to work on my overall communication with people. And if I'm trying to think through conversations, think how this is going to go, think how this is going to go, it's never going to work. Because you can't control other people. You can't control other circumstances. All I can control is myself. So I just have to tell myself, try to be more conscious, more present, more patient with whatever you're encountering. And that's all you have to do and move forward. You can't think through every situation. You can't acknowledge every negative possibility. And you can't acknowledge every positive one. So it's not important to live in the negative, but live in a positive intention. Live in a world that's you feel like it's befitting of you. And it's not really about the world. It's about living in yourself, being you, and being happy about being you, because you're the only person that can be. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you all so much. I really hope y'all enjoying the setup. Y'all ain't get bro name yet, have y'all? Regardless, thank you all for watching. Appreciate y'all. I enjoyed the video. If you do not, keep being great. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're treating yourself like a friend, because at the end of the day, as long as you have yourself, you have someone. So thank you, and